Welcome back to the show, everybody. We got a great one lined up for you today. We're going to get the highlights of Bitcoin Nashville-Trump speech and new legislation that could make Bitcoin a reserve asset to the Federal Reserve and the U.S. government. Somebody roll that beautiful intro.
Digital Perspectives with Brad Kimes. Come on in.
Before we get started, I want to tell you about Link to the best home for private equity in the world, ladies and gentlemen. Invest in the leading startups with affordable minimums, broadening investment opportunities for all. Over 1 million registered users, over 82 incredible companies spreading across every amazing growth sector in the economy. AI, fintech, blockchain, digital assets, you name it, they got it. But it runs out because people buy it up so quickly. You may not even realize that you're accredited, and it takes less than 5 minutes to find out if you are. And I tell you, it's a shame if you're listening to this and you haven't at least investigated it. Click the link below the video, sign up and get started today. You won't believe the amazing deals that they find for you and the amazing specials that they offer from time to time with the promos, which are absolutely unmatched in this industry, along with the affordable minimum. So make sure you click the link below and get started today. Now let's get going with this great interview and conversation with Perry-Ann Boring from the Digital Chamber. All right, welcome back. We're here with Perry-Ann Boring from the Digital Chamber. Perry-Ann, how you doing today?
Doing awesome. Good to be back.
I bet, yes, it is good to be back. It's good to have you back. And back from Bitcoin Nashville. You know what, Perry-Ann? I mean, it was clear to see. We wanted to go, but we had all kinds of stuff getting in the way. We weren't able to make it. And shout out to the Digital Chamber for 10-year anniversary celebration. We're going to talk about that too, which is super huge. But it was clear to see that there was an incredible energy this year at Bitcoin Nashville. Tell us what it was like.
Yeah, it was really fun. I mean, they reportedly had 20,000 people there. It felt like 20,000 people. It was, I mean, for me, what was really exciting is that the policy was very much front and center. You know, I think Donald Trump's first ever Bitcoin speech, they really, they were kind of amping that up and hyping that up the weeks leading up to the conference. So it really allowed Bitcoin to enter, I think, a mainstream narrative in a way that opportunity really hadn't been seen before. But in addition to all the policy and the political talks, there was a lot of talk there, a lot of companies building on the Bitcoin blockchain. The mining companies had a very large presence at the conference as well. One thing that I like about the Bitcoin conference is they always have an entire art section in the expo hall. And there's a lot of artists who have been inspired by Bitcoin and have made like Bitcoin enabled art things. There's just a lot of really like fun and creative stuff in there. So I always check that out. And then a lot of companies and a lot of investors and just, a lot of movers and shakers from the industry come in. So it's a lot of hobnobbing, a lot of networking. There's a lot of opportunities to connect with awesome people and see what people are doing in the Bitcoin space all around the world.
Now, you guys have just recently celebrated a 10-year anniversary at the Digital Chamber. Holy moly, 10 years. Did you think you'd be doing this 10 years after you started? I mean, what is that like? I mean, this has been a journey for you. Talk about it.
I mean, it's really been a journey. I mean, looking back, that an entire decade has passed. It's kind of hard to fathom. I think when we launched the Digital Chamber, if you would have asked me where would we be in 10 years, I think I would have said that I thought we'd be further along than we are. I mean, adoption, we're still in very early stages of adoption. While this is making national headlines and international news stories, we're still, I think globally, total Bitcoin and crypto adoption is probably like 1% globally. It's a lot more here in the United States. But we have not reached that mass adoption. It's taking a while. And then we've had a lot of setbacks, and we knew those setbacks would happen. And that's one of the reasons why we started the Digital Chamber, so we could fight and advocate for this technology, knowing that it would disrupt a lot of stuff in the current financial system and the monetary order and the economic system. So there have been, in my opinion, intentional misinformation and disinformation campaigns to try to discourage people from getting involved in this space. I mean, I can't tell you how many people I've talked to over the past decade who have said, yeah, I mean, I know you're really excited about it, but I heard this, this, and this, and that's just, that's a non-starter for me, so I'm not interested. It's funny, I was catching up with a friend this week who I hadn't seen in several years, and they're like, several years ago, you told me I should buy this Bitcoin stuff, and here we are, and Bitcoin's close to 70K, and I really would have done well had I listened to you. And I'm like, you can still do really well, and you can still listen to me because we're still at those early stages of adoption. But I think there's a number of reasons why this hasn't completely hit that mainstream adoption quite yet, but I do believe we're hitting that tipping point, and the work that we do in our education and our advocacy and in advocating for this technology and fighting back. I mean, we've done a number of lawsuits just in the past year, making sure there's nothing inappropriate or illegal being placed on this technology. All of that is certainly helping, but we still have a lot of work to do before this technology really reaches the people of the world.
And I saw that you just recently got a senator to come from the anti-crypto army side to the crypto army side. Tell us about that. Was it Senator Marshall? Was that whatever?
We had a very interesting win last week. So, I mean, even we were actually on our way to our 10-year anniversary party, and we get news that Senator Roger Marshall, who we've talked about on this show many times, we love to poke at him and point him out, but he came off his bill. So you guys have been following this story for quite a while. We started a campaign called Stop the Crypto Ban. Senator Roger Marshall partnered with Senator Elizabeth Warren to introduce a bill that would effectively ban crypto here in the United States. It would outlaw the use of self-hosted wallets. It would make it virtually impossible to run a node or to do any type of node validation, to mine digital assets. I mean, this would have really, I think, been the nail in the coffin for our industry in the United States. Senator Marshall was on that bill. He's the Republican. So between him and Elizabeth Warren being the Democrat lead, him being the Republican lead, this bill was introduced as a bipartisan effort. And that led to over a dozen members of Congress or Senate also sponsoring that bill. And it was brought up in 3 hearings in the past 2 years, year and a half. And we've been in the 118th Congress. So we put a lot of pressure on Roger Marshall to come off that bill. We leaked a video where he had said the American Bankers Association actually wrote the bill. We were able to get that on film. We got that out. That got over 1 million views in less than 24 hours. So it's, efforts like the work you're doing, Bradley, that's helped bring awareness and help put pressure on his office to make people understand the people do not stand with any attempts to restrict our access to any type of open source technology, because that's not an infringement on our free speech. So he came off of his own bill. He is no longer a sponsor of his own bill. As someone who used to work in the US Congress, that is extremely rare. Typically, when a member of Congress introduces a bill, so it's in the congress.gov website, it's in the Congressional Register forever, for them to then come off of it and reverse that position, that is really, really hard to do. So it's certainly a testament to the work of the whole community, participating in political action, participating in conversations with our public policymakers, sending that loud and that clear message. We do not stand with these types of decisions, are making an effort. So it was really exciting on our 10-year that we got such a big win. And we have one more Republican to get off. So the last person is Senator Lindsey Graham. He is the lone Republican on the bill. So unfortunately, Elizabeth Warren can still promote this as a bipartisan solution. So we're really targeting Lindsey Graham's office, because once he comes off, now this is a partisan bill. So it'll have, less, really less validated, less likely it would move through the legislative process if it's strictly a partisan effort.
I just think it's so powerful that he pulled himself off of that as a co-sponsor of that bill. As you mentioned, it's not just someone who was just simply supporting the bill. It is a monumental thing to have him do that. And I hope that you can get Lindsey Graham to do it too. I know he could be a little
all
tricky.
over there.
Yeah, I know it could be a little tricky. Now, look, Now let's talk about the two big things that really went on. First of all, Trump spoke at Bitcoin Nashville, giving huge credibility to that event and this technology broadly. And I really love the fact that while he spoke at this event, he was broad in using crypto a lot as a word to speak to the industry and not just to Bitcoin. And I thought that was very thoughtful and poignant of him because so many people could get tied down to the specifics there. And it does feel like he is prepared now where he was not prepared in his first four. You know, he wasn't an advocate. He wasn't feeling Bitcoin that much, but he's changed 180 degrees here. And he said he's going to bring a market to us. But there's two very special things that got said here. Trump positioned Bitcoin in one particular way about what the government may do or could do. And then Senator Lummis pitched a bill just recently that's slightly different. Can you help us understand the differences there?
And there were actually really four speeches, in addition to Trump's speech and Senator Lummis's speech, that talked about this strategic national Bitcoin reserve or stockpile.
Okay.
So, in Donald Trump's speech, the former president, he announced a strategic national Bitcoin stockpile. Those are the specific words that he used. And he started by saying, you know, never break the cardinal rule of Bitcoin, which is never sell your Bitcoin. And he kind of used that to introduce this concept. And he said, we will never sell our Bitcoin. The United States has become one of the largest holders of Bitcoin in the world through law enforcement actions that, you know, the US government has seized Bitcoin through the Silk Road issue and other criminal enterprises and that type of stuff. So he's saying we're gonna never sell that. We're gonna make it a stockpile. And that was kind of the end of it. That's what it is. We're just not gonna sell our Bitcoin. Mind you, on the world stage, Germany just sold all their Bitcoin. So they have, you know, a lot of nation states have acquired Bitcoin through the law enforcement process. Germany just sold all their Bitcoin. That actually put a lot of downward pressure on the price just a couple of weeks ago. As soon as Donald Trump finished his speech, Cynthia Lummis came out and she announced that she had introduced a new bill. It's called the Bitcoin Act of 2024, which creates a strategic national Bitcoin reserve. So hers goes another step further from Donald Trump's, what he outlined in his speech. In addition to never selling the Bitcoin we already have, she pledged to buy 1 million Bitcoin in addition to create this strategic reserve. And then it goes on to say that the bill text goes on to say that those Bitcoin can only be used for one purpose, and that's to pay down the national debt. I actually love this idea, particularly as a millennial and, you know, someone from the younger generation, because it's really the older generations that have straddled the younger generations with crippling debt. It's an issue. I mean, when I worked in Congress 13, 14, 15 years ago, we were always having to, you know, pass a new budget bill. And this topic always came up. How are we going to address our debt issue? And the phrase was always, we're kicking the can down the road. And they just said that over and over again, every year, every quarter, however often they brought these things forward. We're kicking the can down the road, and they're still kicking the can down the road to the point now where the debt is so high that it's essentially impossible to even pay the interest on the debt, let alone the principal. I mean, that's really what the younger people are faced with, which to me is truly disgusting. It's, you know, part of leaving a legacy is you should be leaving your legacy, your children, your grandchildren, the future generations of your population. You should be leaving them assets, not leaving them with your debt to pay back. So this is something that, you know, has created just anxiety in my own personal life of like, how are we going to pay all this back? When I graduated college, my share of the national debt was over $50,000. So as a 21-year-old, you know, person entering the workforce, I'm like, how would I ever pay back $50,000? Well, that number has grown so much in the past 15 to 20 years. Everyone's saying the same question. So this is, I thought what Cynthia Lummis did was extremely smart, because it's not only helping fortify the balance sheet of the US government with the best performing asset class in the world, it also puts forward a very logical and realistic plan to address our debt crisis. So that's Cynthia Lummis bill. That's the Bitcoin Act of 2024. And in fact, that text was just released on Wednesday of this week. So you can now view that on Congress.gov as well. But there's two other speeches that were important to look at. So we talked about, so Donald Trump creating the stockpile, Cynthia Lummis going a whole other step forward with the reserve. Kennedy also gave a speech saying he would pledge to do the same, but he said he would buy 4 million Bitcoin. So he took it to even further. And then the fourth talk was Michael Saylor, and Michael Saylor laid out the economic case for why to do this. And one of the things that he talked about is that, Bitcoin is an asset class in and of itself. And there's really only room for maybe one, maybe two nation states to really lead in Bitcoin reserves, just because there's not that, there's only 21 million Bitcoin. So there's just not that many countries that are going to be able to create an actual stockpile. So he laid out the financial and the economic case for why a nation state should have a stockpile, but then he also talked why you should do this as a corporation using MicroStrategy as the case study and the example. And then he also talks about as an individual, how you can have your own individual, strategic Bitcoin stockpile. What's the economic case for that? So those were, I think, some of the highlights about where Bitcoin is going and what I think captured the most attention at the conference.
Yeah, you could tell just from, me seeing like the post as the conference was unfolding. It was like, this is a really strong conference this year. And I just think to myself, if we see the government adopt in fashion, whether it's, Trump's kind of version where it's more just a stockpile of the asset, or whether it's more a strategic reserve asset like Lummis is talking about to pay the debt down. I feel like if that in any form, shape of that kind of comes to be, a real element that takes place, I almost feel like, well, that's like our biggest sign that the economy itself is going to go through a monumental change, right? The monetary system, the financial system, I feel like if the government really takes that position, we are going to experience some hyperinflation, because I think that's, and I mean it in the best way, that they're finally acknowledging there's other resources that they can do to backstop what they may be facing, right? So I just feel like, I almost wonder, is it the government acknowledging the power of the innovation itself of this space? Or is it the government going, my God, we can't kick the can. Hand me that Bitcoin,
Yeah, I think that is a very smart observation. I think that might be the reason why Donald Trump didn't take this call to the next level. He really stopped short of us buying Bitcoin, creating that reserve, anything that could allude to or potentially lead to backing the dollar with hard assets again. He didn't cross that line. There's a reason why he didn't. He absolutely was asked to, because it was clearly coordinated with Senator Lummis, with her going out as soon as he finished his talk. She came out with the bill that called for it. I would assume the reason why he didn't take that extra step and call for that is because of how much of a disruption that would be to our existing system. I personally think it's in the best interest of all Americans to have a strong dollar. At the end of the day, the world reserve currency status of the dollar should be the #1 priority for national security. If we lose that, it would completely change our way of life as Americans. I mean, you look at the United Kingdom, they were the world reserve currency before us. We took it from them. They're still recovering from that all these decades later. Their economy, it has never been, what it was under their, that monetary order. So in order to preserve and protect the strength of the dollar and to pass that hegemony to future generations, to make sure the next generation of Americans get the same benefits that the current, Americans get, we should ensure the dollar is going to continue to be the world reserve currency. And Trump talked about inflation. He said some really interesting things about inflation. He said Bitcoiners understand inflation better than everybody else. And you guys were warning about this before anybody else. And actually, I'm not sure Trump totally understands what inflation is, because he said he was going to tackle inflation by bringing energy prices down. Well, okay, that's great, but really the root of inflation is continuing to print more money. That's the expansion of the monetary base. That's really where inflation comes from. And he was just as big as a money printer as everybody else that served in the same office. I mean, they're all, they all did it.
Yeah.
So, and my position is, in order to preserve our financial status, dominance, preeminence, hegemony for the next generation, we should be going back to a sound money system. And Bitcoin should absolutely be a part of that. I'm not saying we necessarily need to go on a Bitcoin standard, a sole Bitcoin standard, although that may where it ends up in the long run. But hard assets can also include gold and silver, platinum, palladium, real estate, and other things.
This is exactly what I actually talk about on the channel all the time, is that there should be a backing of multiple different hard assets underpinning the dollar, and that way the dominance is there. And certainly you could have digital assets, Bitcoin, other assets. I think XRP, XLM, all of those have to have clarity and adoption, finality to some cases, and we need legislation. But I think those assets, and I would encourage a lot of people, if they're excited, because I mean, look at the journey of Bitcoin, how it's gone from a libertarian movement to a possible conversation of being, a reserve asset. I mean, there's literally a bill that's introduced for that to be the case, right? And I just think that's amazing to me, that if that doesn't show the world the power of this technology, I really don't know what else you could show someone at that point, right? But to understand that, I say to myself, wow, like if this has gone from a libertarian journey to a possibility to be, a credible asset to back, Larry Fink's calling it a flight to quality. That tells me there's a huge financial correction coming. This is a guy who couldn't stand Bitcoin, right? And saying these things. Jamie Dimon told Donald Trump he'd change his position on Bitcoin if he ends up being the Secretary of Treasury. Essentially, I'm paraphrasing, right?
So they say.
So they say, right? Knock on wood.
I'd love to get that in writing.
Yeah, exactly. I would too, because they say it for so many years. They've gone one way. You don't know if you could really truly trust them, right? That is the concern. But I just think it's an amazing moment that we're in, because I see a potential for this. Obviously we're watching real world asset tokenization take place at the same time as we're seeing the introduction of ETFs into traditional markets. There's a meld happening here, right? There is a real moment. And as you said in the beginning of this talk, we are still early. I know all of us have been here for a long time, so we don't feel like it's early. But as in the way of understanding these products and this technology inside of the financial system, we are still super early. And to me, that's super exciting.
Yeah, it is. So you had asked earlier kind of what would the ramifications of this be? So, again, Trump didn't commit to actually buying Bitcoin or backing the dollar with Bitcoin, but that is what's in Cynthia Lummis's bill, and that's kind of what the conversation is. And that's what Kennedy proposed actually several months before the Bitcoin conference, was backing treasury bonds with a basket of assets. So this is a part of the conversation. So if the United States actually made the policy of doing any of these things, there's, a whole bunch of things on the table that we're all debating. But you can believe that this would trigger many other countries around the world to follow suit. And then you think about the type of buying action that that's going to bring into Bitcoin. And in Michael Saylor's talk, he thinks the bull case for Bitcoin is the price will be 45 million in 10 years or so. You have to go back and look at his slides. But I mean, the bull case is, 45 million. How do we get there? So a lot of people, and I've shared a number of valuation models over the years that our members and investors use. Like, how do you determine the value of Bitcoin? Looking at different factors, either running like a historical regression analysis, using Metcalfe's law, stock to flow. I mean, there's a couple models people are using, but most of them all have Bitcoin at $1 million a coin by 2029. And when you present those, you know, I've been on CNBC like many times, there was like one period where they keep having me back, and I was showing these models saying it's $70 million, and they're like, you are absolutely nuts. It like, I've had people like laugh in my face over this because they don't get it. This is how you get there. You have these types of buyers. It's not just people buying Bitcoin, it's corporations buying Bitcoin, it's institutional investors buying Bitcoin, and then it's nation states buying Bitcoin. And when there's only 21 million, that's going to put extreme pressure on the price.
There's no question, it really will, and is because it's 21 million, right? You know, and you think about the percentage of Bitcoin that have already been lost. I mean, one of the smartest things I ever did was I bought my Bitcoin and got my exposure to it inside an IRA, so it's tax free. And every time I look at it, I feel so damn smart because I'm like, man, you let this thing run because it's tax free for me. I'm watching this thing grow, and when I'm 59 and a half, I could tap into this, pay me, and I didn't got no taxes on it. I mean, it's unbelievable. I every day at least once, I'm like, you know what? Thank you, I Trust Capital. You know what I mean? It's like, it's unbelievable. What an opportunity, right? I mean, it's like you're this early, not many times, and we talk about this a lot too on the channel, but how many times does retail get a chance to front run Wall Street? It just doesn't happen every day.
That's such a good point. I guess I hadn't really thought of it like that way, but it's because it's a bottom up, it's a grassroots technology. This was a technology that was released as a gift to the world. It's literally for free. It's open source software that anybody who wants can have access to it. Where a lot of financial technology and financial products are top down.
Yeah.
You know, they come from the tippy top, and over time they may make their way down to retail, probably not. But we haven't really seen many grassroots financial products introduced ever. And I think that's a really smart way to think of it.
It's a super remarkable opportunity. I hope that everybody hearing our voices really takes a look at what's going on in their portfolio, because only people can make up their minds, and there's a lot of opportunity out here. It doesn't have to be just Bitcoin, right? But obviously this is very exciting for Bitcoin, and there could be some major changes through the way of this legislation or a change in administration that absolutely puts a kind of demand and pressure for the asset. And I believe further extending into this space, we're going to see that. I think we're going to see that trend continue and just multiply.
Yeah, Michael Saylor's talk was really funny. He talked about kind of the different stages of being a Bitcoin maxi. He's like, you can be a normie, which I think his threshold was like, you have like 10% of your assets in Bitcoin. Right. So you can be a normie, or you can be a maxi. You can put like 80%, up to 80% of your wealth into Bitcoin. You can be a double maxi. You can then go take out a line of credit on your home. Right. And buy Bitcoin with that. Yeah. And then he said you can be a triple maxi, and by a triple maxi, you then move to a tax favorable jurisdiction like Puerto Rico, or he said UAE and Singapore. So you made me think of that with the iShares, the tax-free piece, but the capital gains tax are pretty significant. For anybody, owning Bitcoin, at least here in the United States, and a lot of countries don't have a capital gains tax on Bitcoin. It's treated as a currency, it's taxed as a currency. So you don't have those same tax issues here. Kennedy has pledged to get rid of those. So just FYI, he pledged to remove the tax from a transfer between Bitcoin to US dollars. And the purpose was to incentivize self-custody. So if you have if you're custodying your own Bitcoin and you're transferring your Bitcoin into US dollars and, doing whatever with it, that wouldn't be taxed. But if you own an ETF, a spot Bitcoin ETF, if you convert that, that's obviously a security. That product's obviously going to trigger the capital gains tax. So by removing just the transfers from Bitcoin to USD directly, that would be a tax advantage way to invest in Bitcoin, to incentivize that self-custody, to make sure the Bitcoin network stays decentralized, and you don't have big consolidation on Wall Street in these ETF products.
Yes. And now let's talk about the FIT21 Act, right? So first of all, you did a great job after the fake administration meeting and coming out, you know, the fake meeting that happened with the crypto industry leaders, Brad Garlinghouse and Circle and some others there. And you came out and were like, there's no one that showed up that could effectuate policy. This was a posturing meeting, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, just nothing. So is it off the table this year? Is it completely out? I mean, because here's the sad part. The sad part is that I know like Representative Ritchie, I know Wiley Nickel. I mean, you know, there are Democrats that are advocates for this space. And it's a shame because they're hung up now, right? And it's hard for this to be a nonpartisan issue. So where do you put the Fit 21 Act? Is it going to have a chance to get done this year, or is this like it's 25 and a new administration, or it's not happening?
Yeah, I think that's a question a lot of people are asking on Capitol Hill. My own personal opinion is it's a very long shot to get it done this year. There's just so many things that have to happen in order to get a bill passed and signed through law. So it's passed the House, great. It's now over to the Senate to do whatever they're going to do. They're doing a lot of stuff. They actually have 3 versions of a market structure bill. None of them are, you know, none of them is a companion bill to what passed the House. So remember, they have to pass the same bill. If there's one thing different, it has to go back through and be reconciled. So you had the Lummis-Gillibrand bill, which was already introduced in the previous Congress, reintroduced this Congress, but it's not the same as the House version. So those aren't the same bills, but they do somewhat, you know, they have very similar goals. It's market structure goals. So you have the Lummis-Gillibrand bill, and then the Senate Ag Committee has their own bill called the DCCPA. That bill is CFTC only, so it gives the CFTC spot market authority over digital assets. So it takes half of the House version of the bill, because the House version was an Ag Committee and the House Financial Services Committee joint bill. So it covered SEC and CFTC jurisdiction. On the Senate side, the Ag Committee created their bill with the CFTC piece, but they didn't partner with banking to do the SEC piece. So these are very different efforts. And again, this has to reconcile if you get something through both chambers. Now there's a third effort. JD Vance, who's now running as VP with Trump, he's also looking to introduce a version of Fit 21, but a partisan version, a Republican only version. So, and that hasn't been introduced yet or announced yet. So don't tell everybody, because I don't think that's public news, but that is happening. So you've got 3 different efforts on the Senate. Those have to come together and then go back to the House and be reconciled. And then it's also to be signed by the president. I mean, do we even know, is Joe Biden going to continue to serve as the president through the end of the year? I don't know. I mean, there's just so many questions at this point with what, like, the function of the Biden administration. I think it's a very, very long shot to think Biden or Harris are going to be able to figure out their policy and pass a bill while they're campaigning, while she's campaigning for office. That being said, Harris has never made a statement on crypto. We have no idea where she is. She's never talked about it. So we know what the Biden administration's position is. They tried to kill it. But Harris herself has not actually come out with her own statement, her own position. She has a chance to update it now that she's running for president. You know, the campaign could have a position. So again, I think we have a very low possibility of this getting passed into law this year, because politics are getting in the way of good policy getting done. The Senate's not on the same page as the House, it's not organized, and then the White House has other pressing things to address.
I'll say, boy, that's one way to say it. Yeah, that is a very nice way to say that. Now, let me ask the uncomfortable question, because I can't imagine that the administration wouldn't change, but I couldn't imagine it last time either. And that went down in a way that I didn't expect either. So if this administration doesn't change, let's say we get a Harris administration, right? Because obviously Biden's not going to be the one. But And I don't hope for that because I'm a one-issue voter, and it's been very clear to me who's going to be an advocate to get legislation done for this technology in this entire space or not, and it is the Trump administration if they get in. But if the Harris administration's in, what are your thoughts about this space and the wind that appears and feels like it's in our sails right now? What happens to this industry if nothing changes?
Yeah, again, Harris has an opportunity to update this administration's position on crypto. Right now, the position is very much anti-crypto. They're against it. They want to push it out of the United States. But Harris will, be likely the nominee, so she could come up with her own position. There is hope that she would. I mean, she comes from California. She has some very, very large VC donors behind her that are massive investors throughout the cryptocurrency space. She's also younger, so typically younger people in general understand the tech, so they're a little bit more open to it. Not to mention the progressive case for cryptocurrency, where literally democratizing access to something that has discriminated against different classes of people and societies and races. So, I mean, there's a very, very strong progressive case for cryptocurrency. So all of those factors Harris has an opportunity to take leadership here. We haven't seen that so far. I don't know if we will. I'm not super optimistic on that. So if Harris were to become the president, I think my advice to my members and my friends who are working in this space is to pad your legal budgets. I think it's going to be more of a lot of what we saw in the past 4 years, with a caveat. It could be updated, but at this point, there's nothing showing us there will be any update, which means we're going to continue to be in a defensive posture. They've really weaponized the administrative state to try to discriminate against any company investing, developing, building in the Bitcoin and blockchain space. They're trying to kill companies by debanking them. They're going off after them with frivolous lawsuits. You have arbitrary and capricious behavior. I mean, we all know these things, right? So I think the most important thing would be prepared legally to fight back against that administrative state. So I think I may have more friends that would probably leave the country, to be honest, if this administration gets another 4 years, because I think it'd be very, very hard. Like, if you are a diehard person working in the cryptocurrency space and this is the future for your career, you may only have one option, which is to go somewhere else.
There's no question about it. And I don't mind saying one of the other great takeaways that I caught from Bitcoin Nashville was listening to Donald Trump saying there will be no CBDC.
He did say that.
In the United States.
Yes.
I like that one. We can leave it right there. Perry Ann, congratulations to you, all your hard work, and all the amazing people at the Digital Chamber. Listen, everybody we've ever met at the Digital Chamber is remarkable to a person. And I know I just told you guys that at your little party, but I do feel like that. And I hope that everybody out here gets the opportunity to interface and meet people from the Digital Chamber. If they participate in anything, come to a conference, don't hesitate to engage with everybody, because you guys are doing great stuff and you're very open and receptive to conversation and understanding what people are interested in and what matters to them. And they should share that with you, and they should also engage with you to find out what they can do in their district to further this cause. So tell people where they can find the Digital Chamber.
You can check us out online at digitalchamber.org, or you can check us out on Twitter or X at Digital Chamber, and my handle is Perry Ann DC.
Wonderful. Perry Ann, thank you so much.
Thanks, Bradley.